Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis just made an announcement that says a lot about where we are as a country and where our politics might be headed in the very near future. You see, yesterday morning, he hosted a roundtable with a slew of COVID vaccine skeptics and opponents. And after more than an hour of spreading fear and misinformation, the governor came to the point. He is calling for an official investigation into the organizations that developed and promoted the life-saving vaccines.
Today, I'm announcing a petition with the Supreme Court of Florida to impanel a statewide grand jury to investigate any and all wrongdoing in Florida with respect to COVID-19 vaccines. And that will come with legal processes that will be able to get more information and to bring legal accountability for those who committed misconduct.
That's not all. DeSantis is also launching Florida's own version of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is a kind of like anti-CDC.
Our CDC at this point, anything they put out, you just assume at this point that it's not worth the paper that it's printed on. And so it's not serving a useful function. It's really serving to advance narratives rather than do evidence-based medicine. So in Florida, we're creating what we're calling the Public Health Integrity Committee. It's a committee of expert researchers that will be able to assess recommendations and guidance related to public health and healthcare, but particularly being able to offer critical assessments of things that bureaucracies like the FDA, CDC, and NIH are doing.
Just be really clear here, the folks that he's putting on this board are sort of COVID dissidents. These are people who are very outside the mainstream of what the rest of their colleagues in public health think. All of them together, that's what qualifies them, which again is fine as far as it goes. But this is very clearly and obviously a political move by DeSantis to position himself as the anti-vax candidate ahead of a possible run for president in 2024. It's clear as day. Now, what's also clear as day is he was not always against the vaccine. For instance, listen to how enthusiastically he endorsed it back in the summer of 2021.
If you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, the chance of you getting seriously ill or dying from COVID is effectively zero. If you look at the people that are being admitted to hospitals, over 95% of them are either not fully vaccinated or not vaccinated at all. And so these vaccines are saving lives. They are reducing mortality.
Notice he wasn't talking there about like all the misconduct of the nefarious mRNA companies and, well, what about people with adverse side effects? No, the simple plain truth that he embodied there was a simple plain truth then and is a simple plain truth now. But Ron DeSantis, in the interim, has sensed there's a political opening here, so he's changed his tune. And he's not wrong on that. Among the hardcore MAGA Republican base, vaccines are, I think, the one issue where Donald Trump is on the wrong side of the base. If you want an example, just listen to the crowd's reaction when the ex-president admitted to Bill O'Reilly that he is vaxxed and boosted.
Both the president and I are vaxxed, and did you get the booster?
Yes.
I got it too. Okay, so...
Don't. That's there's a very tiny group over there.
So he hears the booze because he's very attuned to the base. And that reaction from the base, it's really bad. It's worrisome. Because here's the great irony, the grand irony as we head into 2024, as this man, Donald Trump, attempts to seek the presidency once again. If you had to identify one single, solitary, good thing that Donald Trump did in office, I think unambiguously the answer is Operation Warp Speed. That was the announced effort to speed up the development of COVID vaccines by working with pharmaceutical companies and guaranteeing large purchase of those vaccines by the government at the end. Now, Trump has taken more credit for the success of that program than he deserves, but that's what presidents often do. And given how terrible his response to the pandemic was in nearly every other way, Operation Warp Speed really stands out as a high point of the Trump presidency, perhaps the only one, especially now. And as the end of the year approaches, as we survey a world that has dealt with COVID for nearly 3 years, there are, I think, two completely unambiguous conclusions we can draw about COVID policies over that time, amidst a lot of dissent and argument. One is that those global lockdowns in the earliest weeks and months of the pandemic, when the world shut down, really were necessary. Without them, we really would have seen the entire planet's healthcare system overwhelmed by the virus in an almost sci-fi dystopian kind of fashion. The other obvious enduring truth is that the COVID vaccines are an incredible, historic scientific achievement that have been remarkably effective in reducing the severity of illness, as have the subsequent boosters. Lots of other COVID policies remain really legitimately up for debate. Like all the trade-offs that come with, for instance, closing schools and when they should have been reopened in person, and then the real and enduring costs of people having to isolate for so many months, being disconnected from, for instance, mental health providers and substance abuse providers, and all the reverberations throughout society we've had. But the impact of vaccines is incontrovertible. It's clear as day. A new study finds that in the 2 years since the first vaccine doses were administered in the United States, they have prevented more than 18 million hospitalizations and saved more than 3 million lives. 1 out of every 100 Americans, more or less, alive today because of the vaccines. Another study estimates that the COVID vaccine saved nearly 20 million lives worldwide in just 1 year. And I'm not even talking about the healthcare costs they save, which is obviously in the trillions of dollars, paid for themselves over and over and over and over and over and over again. And look, this is not like something in the past. Look at China right now, all right? The world's largest country, the place where COVID started, and also the world's last zero COVID holdout, a place that has been using for 2 and 3 years lockdowns and quarantine and test and trace and forcible quarantine to stop COVID transmission in its tracks. And after the population basically rebelled against those measures, understandably, because they're onerous, they're finally easing that policy. And guess what? Well, they're seeing a surge of cases. And what is left to do? What's the one thing they could do? They are turning to mass vaccination to rapidly increase immunity in a population with lagging vaccination rates, particularly among the elderly, and little exposure to the virus. Look at that chart. Look how daily vaccinations skyrocketed at the beginning of this month after the Chinese government announced they were easing the zero COVID policy. That's the context. As we look towards a future where there may be a post-Trump Republican Party, we'll see. And apparently, what that looks like from an ideas perspective, political perspective, is impaneling grand juries to investigate the companies that, on a record timeline, produced the vaccines that saved 3 million lives in the country alone. To spread doubts and skepticism baselessly about those vaccines and their enduring efficacy. It is pure madness. But DeSantis didn't come up with this. He is a follower, not a leader, if he is anything. The anti-vaccine rhetoric is from the right-wing media, the constant drumbeat of negativity about vaccines emanating from the base and from Republican candidates for office and elected leaders. And of course, most importantly, the right-wing media. The vaccine denialism on the right is among the most cynical, nihilistic, destructive things I have ever seen in my career covering politics. In fact, it is the single most dangerous thing I've ever seen in my career covering politics. Leading figures in the conservative movement, conservative media, political parties see a political opportunity in it. And the reality is, in pursuing that, they are producing more death. Thanks to the efforts of people like Tucker Carlson, Ron DeSantis on the right, when the next pandemic comes, which we don't know when it's going to come, to be clear, like it could just show up tomorrow, our country as a whole will be in worse shape to deal with it than we were before COVID. We will be even less equipped to manage it, which is really, truly remarkable when you think about how poorly we did the last time around. Basically, the highest deaths per capita in the richest part of the world. The party that wants to regain political power in this country, think about this. They have this guy, okay? He's discredited in every possible way. He tried to end constitutional governance in the United States. He oversaw the deaths of hundreds of thousands in COVID. The one thing he did right, which was speed vaccine production, is the thing they're going to attack him on. So they can marshal mass deaths as a means of getting elected. Truly an appalling spectacle.